A former reality TV contestant is now in federal custody. His life completely changed by choices that led him down a much darker path than any vote on Survivor. Brandon Hantz, once known for his emotional breakdowns on national television, now faces up to 40 years in prison for serious crimes involving fire, violence, and bloodshed in the streets of Houston. The charges against him include federal racketeering, conspiracy, and arson, crimes that sound like something from a thriller but are part of a real and disturbing case. This is the story of how a troubled former contestant became involved in one of the most violent biker gang conflicts Texas has seen in years, and how fame became the start of a path that could end in life behind bars. His Survivor background, the early signs. Before federal investigators had ever heard his name, Brandon Hantz was trying to outwit, outplay, and outlast on the reality show Survivor. Even then, there were signs of deeper issues. On Survivor South Pacific in 2011, he arrived with the burden of his last name. His uncle, Russell Hantz, had been a notorious figure on the show. From the start, Brandon appeared to be struggling with inner turmoil. His emotional instability and unpredictable behavior stood out. At one point, he shocked viewers by destroying his tribe's food supply, throwing rice into the fire in an apparent breakdown. He returned to the show 2 years later on Survivor Caramoan, but his behavior worsened. It became so concerning that producers made the unprecedented decision to remove him from the game for the safety of others. But once the cameras stopped rolling, the chaos continued, and it grew far more serious. The Bandidos connection, a dangerous new life. While most former reality show contestants returned to private life, Brandon went down a far more dangerous path. In the years after Survivor, he became involved with the Bandidos Motorcycle Club, a group known far more for violence than brotherhood. Founded in 1966, the Bandidos have a long and notorious history, with a reputation that makes law enforcement uneasy. Their motto is, "We are the people your parents warned you about." This was no casual social club. The Bandidos operated with a strict hierarchy, territorial claims, and a loyalty code that rivaled organized crime syndicates. By 2019, tensions between the Bandidos and a rival group, referred to as Club B, had reached a boiling point in Houston. The conflict was violent and escalating fast. Street fights turned into ambushes, and verbal threats led to drive-by shootings. Federal investigators say the Bandidos' leadership issued a chilling order: attack rival members on sight. This is the world Brandon Hantz reportedly chose to enter. The escalation, fire, and bloodshed in Houston. From 2019 to 2022, the violence intensified. In Porter, Texas, a local bar was set on fire. While it may have looked like an accident to outsiders, federal agents believe it was a deliberate arson attack aimed at sending a message to rivals. This fire was just one part of a larger pattern of coordinated violence. Surveillance footage documented beatings in broad daylight. 2 men were killed, one in a parking lot shooting, the other outside a bar in what was described as a planned execution. Business owners and even bystanders were caught in the crossfire. Federal agents from multiple agencies had been watching closely. They knew it would take more than just arrests to dismantle a group like the Bandidos, so they built a RICO case, a strategy often used to prosecute organized crime. Brandon Hantz would soon realize that the consequences he now faced were far more serious than being voted off a reality show. The federal investigation, years in the making. This wasn't a quick bust. Federal agents spent years investigating the inner workings of the Bandidos. They mapped out leadership, territories, and acts of violence. Surveillance and undercover recordings gave them insight into how the group operated, including planning attacks. Initially, Brandon's name appeared in the investigation as someone loosely associated with the club. But over time, his level of involvement became more apparent. He was seen at key locations involved in club business and given a nickname in federal documents, either Gunrop or Loco, which in these circles reflects a person's personality, role, or reputation. By early 2025, prosecutors had enough evidence. They indicted 14 people, including Brandon Hantz, on 22 charges related to organized crime activity. The indictment, a major case, unfolds. In February 2025, federal agents arrested 14 men across Houston in a major takedown. Brandon Hantz was one of them. The charges against him include conspiracy to commit racketeering and arson, each carrying up to 20 years in federal prison. The indictment paints a picture of systematic violence used to maintain control and eliminate rivals. Brandon was specifically charged with the arson that destroyed a bar in Porter, Texas. Prosecutors believe his involvement in that attack was direct and provable. The racketeering conspiracy charge is equally serious. To be charged under RICO, prosecutors must show that someone knowingly contributed to a criminal enterprise. Federal authorities made it clear this wasn't just about individual crimes, but about bringing down a violent network that terrorized communities. The arson in Porter, a turning point. Porter, Texas is typically a quiet community, but one night a bar went up in flames. According to prosecutors, the fire was no accident. It was meant as a warning and a show of strength in an ongoing turf war between the Bandidos and their rivals. Brandon Hantz is accused of playing a central role in setting that fire. Investigators spent months reconstructing the events, analyzing burn patterns, collecting physical evidence, and gathering intelligence on who was involved and why. He is the only defendant charged with this particular arson, which suggests that prosecutors are confident in the evidence against him. If convicted of arson alone, he faces up to 20 years. Combined with the racketeering charge, the total could be up to 40 years, a sentence that for someone in their 30s would effectively mean life behind bars. The bigger picture, a city at war. The biker war in Houston wasn't just about club rivalries. It created a public safety crisis. 2 men died in what prosecutors describe as targeted killings. Dozens of assaults were documented, many involving weapons like metal pipes and baseball bats. Some victims suffered permanent injuries. This wasn't random street crime. These were calculated attacks. Local businesses were also affected. Some were pressured into choosing sides. Others became targets simply for serving the wrong people. Federal agents called it terrorism, violence used to maintain control and spread fear. This is the environment Brandon Hantz allegedly chose to be part of, not as a bystander, but as someone who actively participated in the group's violent actions. The question, how did he get here? One of the most difficult questions is how someone goes from being a reality TV contestant to a defendant in a federal RICO case. Brandon's descent into this world didn't happen overnight, and prosecutors don't include someone in a sweeping indictment like this without significant evidence of involvement. His transformation from troubled reality star to a man facing decades in prison serves as a reminder that fame doesn't protect anyone from the consequences of their choices. Brandon Hantz, from reality TV to federal custody. Brandon Hantz, a former reality TV contestant, is now facing serious federal charges that could result in decades in prison. This progression from an emotionally unstable reality TV personality to an alleged participant in a violent criminal organization represents far more than poor decision-making. The same volatility and aggressive behavior that stood out on television appear to have escalated into something more dangerous in real life. Investigators recorded his presence at key events during the club's conflict, as well as interactions with other members and alleged involvement in activities beyond just being a casual member. The arson charge in particular indicates that prosecutors believe they can prove Brandon played a direct role in one of the most serious incidents in the case. Arson involves planning, preparation, and intent. It's not a charge filed lightly. Brandon's motive remains unclear. It could have been personal struggles, financial hardship, a desire for acceptance, or something else entirely. He hasn't spoken publicly since the indictment, and unless he does in court, his reasons may remain unknown. The federal response. When federal authorities decided to act against the Bandidos, they brought the full power of the U.S. government with them. At the press conference announcing the indictments, officials from the FBI, ATF, DEA, Texas Department of Public Safety, and local police departments emphasized the seriousness of the operation. They described it as one of the most significant organized crime takedowns in Texas in recent history. Officials were clear. This was not about targeting motorcycle riders. This was about dismantling a violent criminal organization that had been operating with little resistance for too long. The investigation involved hundreds of hours of surveillance, dozens of federal agents, and coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies. They also pointed to the use of RICO charges, laws designed to target criminal enterprises, as a clear signal of the case's seriousness. RICO charges require prosecutors to show a pattern of organized criminal activity, not just isolated crimes. For those charged, including Brandon Hantz, it means facing a legal system with harsher sentencing, limited options for early release, and fewer opportunities to negotiate lenient outcomes. This announcement sent a strong message to motorcycle club communities across Texas and beyond. Federal authorities are watching, and similar investigations may already be underway. Brandon's current status. As of now, Brandon Hantz remains in federal custody, awaiting trial. The federal legal process is slow and thorough. Pretrial motions, discovery, and negotiations can stretch over months, sometimes years, before a case even reaches court. The charges he faces carry mandatory minimum sentences, giving judges little room to reduce penalties, even in cases of cooperation. Racketeering charges under RICO are difficult to fight, and federal prosecutors typically only bring them when they have substantial evidence. This case involved years of surveillance, digital evidence, and cooperation from confidential informants. Unlike in Survivor, where strategy and emotion could influence outcomes, federal courtrooms operate strictly on evidence. There are no dramatic confessionals, no second chances, and no immunity. If convicted on both the racketeering and arson charges, Brandon could face up to 40 years in prison, effectively the rest of his life. A larger issue. When reality becomes real, Brandon Hantz's case is not just about one man. It's a broader example of how quickly someone's life can spiral when they get involved with organizations that operate outside the law. The difference between his past on Survivor and his current reality is difficult to ignore. The same emotional instability that once made for good television has, according to prosecutors, become part of a violent pattern of behavior that harmed real people and communities. Federal authorities believe Brandon was not a bystander but an active participant in furthering the Bandidos' criminal goals. His case sends a message to others involved in similar activities. The government is paying attention, and the consequences can be severe. The violence tied to the biker conflict left a trail of harm well beyond those directly involved. Families lost loved ones. Business owners were caught in the crossfire. Communities lived in fear. The ripple effect of organized violence touched many who had no part in it. Brandon's case also highlights broader issues: mental health, accountability, and missed opportunities for intervention. The warning signs were present years ago, but no system stepped in early enough to redirect his path. Prosecutors claim he became more than a controversial public. They allege he became part of a criminal enterprise that used violence to maintain control and spread fear. Their case is built on years of methodical investigation, surveillance, and documented evidence. If convicted, Brandon will face the full weight of the federal justice system.